Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. It is a lovely Sunday evening. Man, the last time we were on here, it was a whirlwind of a day where Inter Miami signed David Ayala. They may have also been on the verge of signing Tristan Blackman. They made Mikael official. They had just announced Tadeo Allende and Rocco Rios. I mean, it was a wild time, and we were kind of just reacting to everything. And now we've had a chance to sit down and think about what it all means. And that's what we're going to do today. A couple follow-up reports and rumors and stuff that's going on. But I think more so, how does it all make sense so far is going to be the topic of the day. But before we do all of that, Saur, my friend, my co-host, how are you feeling today, my man?
I'm feeling great, rejuvenated, ready to go into this year with a renewed sense of motivation. I think last episode, you said it right. We were reacting to things. There was so much happening. And honestly, I was still getting out of my holiday brain. And now I just feel ready to get back into Miami mode. We've got so many things to talk about. The games are going to be coming in soon with the preseason starting in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited for this episode because we're going to actually dissect what's been happening over the last couple of weeks. And this podcast loves to analyze, sometimes overthink, but you know what? That's our USP. So strap in. It's going to be a fun one.
Are you ready for the new season yet? Because I feel like for so much of this offseason, I've been like still kind of holding on to 2025. And then Wednesday was the first time I was like, oh my God, I'm excited to see David Ayala and see what he looks like. I'm excited to see Mikael play that first game. But you know, that was when everything was happening. I kind of still want to just go back and listen to our episode on Christmas Eve about the best 10 games of the year for last season. But I, you know, it's kind of 2 weeks away. Tomorrow is their first day of medicals and stuff, and then the next day they start training. Like it's here, really.
I am super excited. I'm stoked for the new season because there's nothing better than to have new signings that you can analyze, new signings who are going to change the way you play. I think Inter Miami is turning a new leaf with two very important players leaving, a few good players coming in. So I think it's going to be a fresh season. It's going to be a different season. What I'm not excited about is maybe a few players leaving and how the roster actually shapes up towards the end. There's always this is what it looks like on paper and this is what it looks like in practice. I feel like last season we took a bit of time going and getting going. I hope this season we can hit the ground running well and the vibes from last season carry over. And if that's the case, then I'm going to be all for it. I look forward to Inter Miami starting off their preseason. This is going to be a bit of a sprint until the summer. And then after that, going to be another short sprint to the end. So bit of a different season this time around. But that doesn't mean we're not excited for it.
Yeah, you mentioned something in there. And it, you know, all we've done this offseason is load up on talent. And I get... we lost some guys, Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets are irreplaceable, but basically we knew for a long time they were going to not be back. And so since the season ended, we won the Cup. We signed a player from the Premier League. We're signing guys from Argentina, signing guys that are defenders of the year, goalkeeper of the year, guys from Brazil. Like it's all just new talent, young, exciting incomings. And then like I think you start to look at the numbers and the math and maybe there is another shoe to fall, and we're going to talk about that today as well. Because I finally did the math on how all this makes sense, and it makes sense, but I think to make more things happen, you kind of have to sort of rework some things, and we'll talk through some of those scenarios. But let's start with this. Fun little tweet I saw today from Diario AS. Inter Miami, one of the 5 best-selling kits in the world in 2025. I think it was Real Madrid, Barcelona, PSG, Bayern Munich, and then Inter Miami. Now, I think, obviously Messi's the biggest factor in that. I think the fact that it's pink and that's a pretty unique color for World Soccer kits, I think also probably helps. But, I mean, that's got to be the craziest thing you ever did here.
You know, there was another thing that happened today that made me realize, this team is big and it's getting bigger. I was watching the Man United Brighton game and Diego Gomez was going up against Kobe Mainoo. He's the highest scorer for Brighton this season, I think. He's had 8 goals, I believe, in some 20 games. I wouldn't say he's lighting the Premier League on fire, but he's quietly going about his job. And what the commentator said was he's definitely proved all those naysayers wrong who scorned upon him coming from the MLS. And thought that this was never possible, that a player from the MLS could transition so well into the Premier League. That's a point of pride. And then you add these commercial aspects to it, where Inter is now in the top 5 most jerseys sold across the globe. It's on the ascendancy, man. And I think Messi is a major factor for that. We have to thank him for that. But I hope that once Messi leaves, Inter continues to build on its brand in one way or another. But it's so heartwarming to watch, and I feel proud that Inter is now in some conversations with the big names. I know we're far from competing on the football pitch, but commercially, we're getting there.
Yeah, on the Diego Gomez front, he's like a Premier Leaguer. Like he belongs there. He's 22. Like he might be 18 months away from moving to Liverpool or Manchester City or Man United or whatever. But like even if he just stays where he is now at this level, like he's going to spend the next decade in the Premier League.
Brighton's a top 10 club. Easy. Yeah.
So congratulations to him. And yeah, we got to see him sort of evolve from the headless chicken he was in his first game at Inter Miami to
we've seen it all,
belonging on the field with the best teams in the world. Okay, let's get to some of the rumors from last week, or last couple of days. Wednesday night, we talked about Tristan Blackman briefly because we weren't sure what was happening. Michelle Kaufman reported that Inter Miami was about to close a deal for Tristan Blackman. Then 20 minutes later, 45 minutes later, Vancouver's CEO and sporting director came out and put out a statement that we're not looking to sell any players. And that was backed by some of the journalists that are MLS-wide journalists. And it's kind of gone radio silent since then. At the end of that episode, we kind of said, at least I said, I think if it doesn't happen in the next 24 hours, it's not going to happen. And that what happened with Vancouver was either last-second posturing to try and, get some little detail they want at the end, or it was a public rebuke and it was saying, we entertained you for a little bit, but we're not doing this. And as we get here 3 days later, I kind of think that that's not going to happen anymore.
I'm not so sure. I think I'll stick to my stance that there's still some posturing happening behind the scenes. I wouldn't be surprised if Blackman pushes for the move. This is a major opportunity for him to play for the MLS Cup champions. He will be a straight starter if he gets signed for Inter Miami, and it's going to be a major upgrade. If he demands that move, I'm not so sure how his team doesn't let him go. Vancouver, of course, will be playing hardball. He's one of their most important players, and as the sporting director said, he publicly mentioned that they don't want him to leave. So I do think Inter Miami may come back with another offer, but it's an interesting one because it looked like Inter Miami gave the brief that this is going to happen, and then the terms didn't work out. The money's there. Inter Miami just doesn't want to pay the way Vancouver actually wants it. So I'm sure negotiations would be going behind the scenes, but I think this might actually pull through. I don't know. I'm not as skeptical as you are.
I'm okay. Well, just for the record, I'm very skeptical. I think this is over, and would love to be proven wrong. And then Baltasar Rodriguez, who we've gotten over the last 48 hours, rumors that they're working to get a deal to bring him back. I saw a number for $4.5 million. I think that was Herman Garcia Grova saying that was the offer from Inter Miami to a Racing club. We had heard a couple weeks ago that Racing sort of didn't have a deal in place with Miami in the middle of December, and so they were expecting him to come back and be a part of their team. Clearly, it's kicked off where Inter Miami's trying to bring him back. We kind of mentioned him last episode, but that certainly seems more real and potentially even imminent than it did a couple days ago. I have a lot of thoughts about Baltasar and how, not just Baltasar, but how it fits into the lineup and what it means for some of the other players on the team. And as we talk about how this whole thing makes sense, you'll understand what I mean by that. But Baltasar seemingly on the verge of coming back. Thoughts?
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about this in a bit more detail later as well as we talk about the roster construction. I'm on the fence about this, and I know this might not be a popular opinion among the fan base, but I don't see this as a very exciting signing, as some other people might see. So for me, there are still question marks about Baltasar as a player. His his fitness, and how he actually fits into this team, what he actually brings to this team. I feel towards the end of the playoffs, I came to a point where I thought that it would be better if he's on the bench and we actually play with a proper midfielder, somebody who's more of a central midfielder. He's not a winger, he's not a central midfielder. But again, that's a conversation that we can have in more detail. Bottom line up front, I'm a little bit confused or skeptical about how Baltazar actually makes this team better.
Listen, I think he's about to come back, and I'm going to root for him.
Absolutely.
And I want him to be very successful here.
And I think he might have a better season.
Yeah, well, listen, he didn't play. He truthfully did not play many minutes last year. I know it felt like he did it because he started every game at the end, but for the first 80% of the season, he didn't play many minutes. So I don't think it will be very easy for him to have a better season next year than he had this year. I don't think I like the price because it means he's going to be a U22 DP, and I think Inter Miami can do better. I think also when you look at some of the other players we had been linked to, like this kid out of Bolivia, Moises Paniagua, my heart was kind of getting set on him, and I really like him as a prospect, and I compare the potential of him and his production already. Like he had 27 goal contributions as an 18-year-old kid in Bolivia, and I get Bolivia's not the highest level, but the output is real at the professional level. 27 goal contributions is nothing to sneeze at. Like I would have much rather have taken the chance on him for the same price. So we'll see. Obviously, Javier Mascherano really likes Baltasar Rodriguez. And I guess we'll come back to this conversation when we get to how this all makes sense. So we'll be back. Kareem, thank you for the super chat. He says the 3 most important positions to sign. So before we get into how this all makes sense, what do you think? 3 most important positions to sign?
Always putting me on the spot. Striker, midfielder, 1 more defender. Spine.
Yeah, I think so. I think if they sign a striker and a midfielder, they are good to go. And then the center back would be like, bonus. And by the way, just on Baltasar, our chat loves Baltasar Rodriguez.
Yeah. More
so than the average Inter Miami fan, which is, I think, maybe the most interesting dynamic that we've had since we started doing this. Anthony says a winger over a striker. I think that makes, if you can get a guy that can do both, like that would be ideal.
I would say so. I think there's a certain charm about having an out-and-out striker who can support Luis Suarez, just because it gives you a very different dynamic. Because I think you have Messi who can play that false 9. You can maybe put Silvetti in a 4-4-2 up front. So you have players who can maybe do a winger/striker role. Having an out-and-out striker for me would be an interesting prospect. I know that probably isn't what the team's going to look for right now. So I can be okay having another winger/striker who can play both roles or more fluidly.
Okay, let's just get into it. Did the math today, and I want to be clear, I'll give you the addendum in a second. Inter Miami has to fit all of this within the salary cap. Within, everyone's cap charge has to fit within MLS roster rules. And the way MLS roster rules work is that there's a salary cap, and then you can use what's called allocation money to buy players' cap charge down. So that amount of money doesn't count against the salary cap. So in essence, your overall salary cap is actually the official salary cap plus whatever allocation money you have on top of that. The projected salary cap for the 2026 season is going to be $6.425 million. And I did the math today, and I believe this is accurate, that Inter Miami is going to have about $8,551,000 in allocation money to spend on top of that. Just quickly to get that number, I think the starting GAM is going to be about $3,050,000. The starting TAM is going to be $2.125 million. The rollover GAM, so this is how much money they had from last year that they didn't spend, is $2.136 million. And then they're getting $250,000 for the Robert Taylor trade, $350,000 for the Drake Callender trade, $500,000 for the Leo Campana trade, and about $140,000 for qualifying for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So you add all that together, you've got 8.5-ish million in allocation, and then the salary cap's about 6.5. Add those two together, and your total allowable spend is about $15 million worth of cap. Now, on top of that, if you're a DP player, you're going to count about 800, somewhere between 750 and 800,000 against the cap. That number grows every year, but we don't know officially what it's going to be 2026 until the roster rules come out in late January, early February. And then if you're a U22 player, you count either 200,000 or 150,000 against the cap, depending on how old you are. So Lionel Messi, regardless of his salary, is going to cost between 750 and 800,000 against the cap. Same with Rodrigo de Paul. And then all the U22 players will be 200,000, except for Silvetti, who'll be 150,000. Then I went and I kind of made what I think are projections for everyone's salary based on all of the educated information that we have, which means players that are veterans are going to be on similar salaries as what they were in the past. Players that are young generally get a little bit of a boost every year. And then players on new contracts, I kind of went on what Inter Miami's given out in the past. So, for example, Yannick Bright, Noah Allen, Ian Frey, I put them all at about a $500,000 salary, which is the number they gave Benjamin Kramaski when they gave him his new contract. So all of the young guys that got new contracts, I put them at $500,000 because that's what they did with Kramaski. So just to give you an idea of how I came up with some of these projections. And then you add in their transfer fee reorganized, or amortized rather, across the board, and you kind of get a number for every single player, what their cap charge is going to be, whether it's Tadeo Allende at max TAM, Luis Suarez at $1.5 million, Maxi Falcone and Gonzalo Lujan at just over $1 million, Dane St. Clair over $1 million, I have him at $1.3 million, to even guys like Rocco Rios Nova, who I think are going to be in the 350, 400,000. The point is, not every single player is going to be exact, but I think collectively, like, we're looking at a pretty accurate idea of what the situation is, give or take 100, 200,000 across the board. And you add all of that up, you have just under 15 million available to you. You add all that up, you get 14.1 million in roster cap taken up. Meaning Inter Miami, with everyone they have on the roster right now, which is 20 senior team players, has about somewhere between 900 and 950,000 in space to work. Now, they have 14 players that will require an international roster slot, and you got to go buy those generally with allocation money. So you take your million left in space and you kind of distribute it among international roster slots. And that's basically it. You're done. You're spent. So if Inter Miami kept the roster exactly like it is, I think they could make it work. Like, I do think they're still within the rules, but I think that means they're kind of done. Did that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Can I explain it in simple words, and then you can
Please
tell
do.
me whether they understood it correctly or not? So Inter Miami, given all the cap, the GAM, the TAM, all the allocation money that they've received from the transfers, has a kit of about 15 million, right? Close
Correct.
to. The current players that they have on the roster, with all their salaries, the amortization, all of that you take into account, all the 31 players I believe we have on the roster right now.
Well, this is only the 20 senior team players.
Okay, so 20 senior team players means that of those 15 million, are 14 million, 14.1 million has been allocated across the board for those 20 million, correct?
Correct.
Which leaves Inter Miami with somewhere around $900,000 to play around with.
Correct.
Now, Inter Miami has more players who are from international, who will take up an international roster spot than international roster spots available. So to get those international roster spots, Inter Miami will have to use that 900,000 in some way or another to buy more spots so that they can make this work for the 20 players. All that being taken into account, looks like Inter Miami is exhausting its resources to its entirety, which means any new incoming will potentially require more maneuverability within the current roster. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And just to
Okay.
answer a question Tunde said in the chat, is 900,000 enough for 14 international roster slots? Every team starts with 8. Or every American team starts with 8. So they would need to go acquire 6. Is that enough to acquire 6? Actually, probably not, but you're close. So, you kind of make it work somehow. It is sort of relatively feasible. You're right in the right ballpark. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They're not done. Like, I want to be clear. All of that is to say, right at this moment, they're compliant. Like, they're right.
Yeah.
They're there. Like, they're not cheating. They're not blowing past people. They're not breaking the rules, and they're going to be desperate to try and figure this out, or they have some glaring issue that's not going to be cap compliant. Like, they are where they need to be as of right now. Okay.
But this is without Blackman. This is without Baltazar. This is without any prospective winger that we might be bringing in. So if Inter Miami wants to do more, they might have to push the boundaries a little bit. And by that, I mean, find ways of maybe taking people off the roster or whatever.
Right. So just to be clear, this includes all the players that have sort of been confirmed, not necessarily official because they haven't officially got Tadeo Allende and Rocco Rios Novo, but they haven't been announced yet. But it does include them, and then everyone else has been announced. So this does not include Baltasar or any other potential rumors. Okay, so let's find ways to make this bigger so we can go have fun and buy new players. First of all, right now, they're doing the 2DP 4U22 setup. They could switch that to a 3U22 3DP setup. I think we've been on top of this since the beginning of the offseason, that this may be the way to go for the summer, until the summer. And that's where they're at right now. If they stay there, they're going to get an extra $1 million in allocation money by doing that. If they stay throughout the whole year, it's $2 million, but if it's just till the summer, it's $1 million. So that's an extra $1 million to work with right off the bat if they stick with what they have right now. Then you have a lot of players on here that I think, not a lot of players, you have a couple players on here that I think are easy to open up a lot of space. If you take Oscar Ustari, for example, and you buy him out, you save yourself $750,000 in that one move. If you can sell Toto Aviles, for example, a player that we probably don't think is a huge part of the plan for Inter Miami moving forward, you open up more space. If you can do the same thing with Gonzalo Lujan, you open up a lot of space. If you can move those 3 players off the roster, you don't even have to sell them for anything. You just have to move them off the roster. You've opened up an extra $2 million. You open up 3 less international roster slots that you have to go buy, and you open up a U22 spot because you moved Toto Aviles. So just by those 3 simple moves, which I think we all think are relatively prudent decisions and maybe make sense. Maybe makes sense from the player's perspective and also from the club's perspective. Like, these feel like sensible decisions. You've opened up now $3 million in allocation money, an extra $3 million, so you now have close to $4 million. You have an open U22 spot, and you don't need it to buy as many international roster slots. So all of a sudden, like, you have a lot to play with at that point, and it gets pretty fun and pretty easy. And then you can go buy Tristan Blackman or whoever you want and kind of make the math work pretty easily. So first of all, anyone that thinks Inter Miami is cheating to make this happen, they're wrong. The math just maths. Second of all, that allows us to play with, who do we want as a U22? Who do we want as, what do we want to go get? Because all of a sudden, if you can afford another max TAM player, you can go get Tristan Blackman, or you can go get a striker, or you can go get a good quality, high quality midfielder. Or you can move Velasco Segovia off U22 status and go get an extra U22 player.
U22.
I'm the type of person that's gonna really have fun messing around with those. So maybe I should stop there. But did all of that make sense?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think just for the chat, because I have the visual in front of me, so it makes sense for me. I know you tweeted about this earlier, so go check out Scotty's tweet on X, and maybe it makes a little bit more sense. But I think that kind of fits in the realm of what I was thinking was working behind the scenes as well. I think Inter Miami does need to now move on players before they actually pull the trigger for some other big names. And I think that's going to happen as well. Now, who that big name is going to be, because maybe we're thinking Aviles, Lujan, is it that easy to get them off the books? Does anyone actually want them? Would it be easier to move somebody like Telasco Segovia on, Yannick Bright on, Ian Frey on? There's a lot of questions about that as well.
I want to be clear. You don't have to move them on for profit. You
Yeah.
can buy out Oscar Stare using your one-time buyout, and again, the club doesn't seem worried about losing some money to make this whole thing successful. You can sell Toto Aviles for $1 million or $2 million, and he will certainly have suitors at that price point. And Gonzalo Lujan, you can just loan to some club and pay 90% of his salary, but if he's not on your roster, it doesn't affect your cap space. So, I don't think it will be hard to move them. I think it may take some time into the offseason because Inter Miami wants to get the best deal possible, but I think all three of those guys are going to be gone to help make this all make sense.
Yeah, no, I think this makes sense to me, largely in the same ballpark of what I think is happening behind the scenes. But more to come, though.
So, what do we want? What did we say? We want a forward, we want a midfielder, we want an extra center back. If you have an extra U22 spot and you can afford another max TAM player and you can afford another depth piece, they have the room to get exactly who they want. Now, we talked about the international roster slots. That is going to be important, especially if they're going to load up on a bunch of foreign players again. Like if you fill these 3 spots with Americans, it's not even a problem. If you fill them with foreign players, it becomes a problem again. So Tristan Blackman, American. Baltasar Rodriguez, not. So it is, something to keep in mind. But
I will say one thing that surprised me about this front office is that they've actually been going in for a mix of players. It may not necessarily be an Argentine. It could be somebody who's technically American, but belongs to a similar culture, speaks Spanish. So they've been looking into the MLS a lot more than I thought they would, which I think is a general positive. You get in St. Clair, you get in, potentially Tristan Blackman. That's, I think, 2 heavyweights of the MLS coming in. I don't think they're done with that. I think they may actually be looking at more players within the MLS as well, if it makes sense for the team overall.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And but listen, they could get a guy like David Ajala who is foreign and he doesn't, or Mikael, someone who's MLS proven that would still take up an international spot.
Yeah, but what I mean is last season they went with someone like Fafa Pico, where we initially thought he might be a starter, but clearly he was brought in as a depth piece. This season it looks like they're actually going in for the big hitters of the MLS. They want to maybe not front load, but actually bring in first team caliber players from that MLS sort of realm. Now, again, it might just be a couple of players that they looked at and they're going to fit perfectly in the team, and it may not be the case for other positions, but you never know. I just like the idea of them not being committed or married to the idea to bringing in only Argentine players or players from the familiar territories. Let's call it that.
Let's talk about what this team's going to look like, because, man, I had an idea of what I wanted it to look like when this offseason started. And I'll be honest, I don't think we're going to get what I wanted.
I heard 4-4-2 is all the rage these days.
I think we're going to get exactly what we got last year.
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you.
Which is something. And now I want to bring back this Baltasar conversation. Because
can we have a conversation?
Out how this all fits.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Okay, let's just start with the easy parts. Goalkeeper, you have Dane St. Clair, you have Rocco, easy. You agree?
Absolutely.
I think the back line's pretty easy too. No Allen and Reguilon at left back. You have all the center backs that we currently have, and maybe they'll add some or not, but it won't affect, I think, everything else. Right back, you have Frey and Mura, and you're good to go. Then it gets pretty interesting from there.
So we're playing a back 4. We're not playing a back 3, right?
Playing a back 4.
And I think the prospect of us actually playing a back 3 is quite minimal because we don't have Sergio Busquets who's going to fit in and split the centre backs anymore. So I think we're confirmed that we're going to play a back 4. So midfield. That's the interesting one. Let's start with Rodrigo de Paul because he's obviously going to be playing every single minute. Who partners him?
I think it's going to be a rotation.
You say that, but then you forget who our coach is.
Well,
I think there's going to be one player
Let
who's
me
going to
rephrase
be
that.
clearly the front runner to partner Rodrigo de Paul. And then there's going to be a couple of players who will fight for that spot in odd games where we do need to rest that other set player.
I'll be honest. I disagree. I think that might be the idea. And what you're saying, I think, is that you think David Ajala is going to come in and be the guy next to Rodrigo
Correct.
de Paul, and Yannick Bright is going to have to fight with other midfielders, David Ruiz and Santi Morales or whoever, to continue in that, get the scrap games.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to end up playing out like that. Even if that's what Javier Mascherano's idea is right now, I think Yannick Bright is going to earn his minutes. I really do. And I think we saw last year, he really wanted Federico Redondo to work, and he just kept having to go back to Yannick Bright. And there was some times where we wish he went there sooner, but eventually he got there. I think it's going to look like that as well. Now, I do think Ajala is a good player and better than Redondo, but like I think we're looking at two quality options that are going to play a lot. I hope. But then I do remember who our coach is.
Question for the audience. Are we playing a 3-man midfield or a 4-4-2? That's the big question, though, because I think if we solve the formation conundrum, we actually solve the midfield conundrum. The problem with this team is we're so loaded with talented midfielders that we can't afford not to play a 4-3-3. I think that should be the goal, the aim. But how do you fit Suarez in there? Because is Messi going to play right wing? Suarez going to play front? Because I think this midfield and front balance is what's going to really, I think, evolve over the course of the season. But also the players that we sign will determine how that looks like. So are you saying that the midfield is going to be a 2-man with Rodrigo de Paul guaranteed to start, and then next to him, Ajala or Bright or Segovia or Baltazar?
I think it's going to be a 4-4-2. And I think it's going to look exactly like it did last year.
So then should we do an easier exercise first and talk about who the wide fours are going to be?
I don't
because
think
that's
it gets
going
easier.
to be Tadeo Allende and Silvetti, right? That has to be the case.
I don't think so. And this is where I want to bring back Baltazar back to the conversation, because I hate this move. I hate it. And that's not even about Baltazar Rodriguez. It's just you create problems on your roster that really mess me up, that really make me uncomfortable. You know who's going to be the front two in a 4-4-2? It's going to be Messi and Suarez. You know who's going to start on the right side? It's going to be Tadeo Allende. You know who's going to start in the middle? It's going to be Ajala / Bright and Rodrigo de Paul, which means you have one spot on the left for Baltazar Rodriguez, who you're going out and buying, and clearly, you know, like they believe in him. Mascherano really believes in him. Segovia and Silvetti. And I think Baltazar is going to win that. So I think we're looking at Silvetti and Talasco.
Not on
Segovia.
talent.
I don't think on talent. I think we're looking at Silvetti being on the bench. And that really messes me up. And I think we're looking at Segovia not being on the roster, which really messes me up.
I would agree with you if what happened in the playoffs hadn't happened. I think in the playoffs,
Baltazar back then?
In the playoffs, Inter Miami discovered a play style that worked for them. Everyone saw that this team with wide wingers and Messi as the false nine was demolishing every opposition that was coming their way, barring Vancouver, where we clearly had some thoughts. I think there's going to be moments where we play that exact formation that you mentioned, but the playoff run makes me think that Javier Mascherano might be more flexible this time around, and there might be a universe in which we actually play a 4-3-3 where you have a midfield three of Rodrigo de Paul, Ajala / Bright, and let's say Baltazar / Segovia, and a front two of Tadeo Allende, Matteo Silvetti, with Messi playing as that false nine. Bro, I think that's a formation that's going to be utilized more often during the season than we saw. Well, we didn't see it at all during the regular season last year. And because of that, we might actually see more minutes from some of these players than you would expect in a 4-4-2.
I don't think.
Otherwise,
I
all that
hear what you're
happened in the
saying. I
playoffs
hear what you're
just
saying.
goes out the window. You're literally
just don't
taking
say.
the kitchen sink and throwing it out the window.
I also want to be clear. The way you said that right now is as if they transformed into a 4-3-3 team during the playoffs, which is not the truth.
No,
they went from a strict 4-4-2 team to playing a 4-4-2 with a slight
with a false
hybrid.
9. Yeah.
With a slight hybrid towards what you're talking about. But it was not like they fully embraced this idea of we're going to be a 4-3-3 team, and Allende and Savetti are going to be on the wings, and Messi's going to be the false. And it also was 4 games.
But here's the thing, right?
And also, they're not building the roster in a way that makes that make sense. Like if that's what their plan was, they'd be going out and getting midfielders. They wouldn't be buying Baltasar Rodriguez, and they would want to get an extra backup forward, and they'd be looking at wide forwards. Like the things that they're doing makes me think they like the 4-4-2, and they want to run it back exactly like they did last year. Is how my brain is reading this.
The way I looked at the playoffs was attack was a 4-3-3 and defense was a 4-4-2. But I think that's just nuances, right? At the end of the day, it's about the players that are on the pitch and how you utilize them. There's a genuine case to be made that Suarez doesn't actually start every single game anymore. He plays one game on, one game off, perhaps. If that's the case, then you have the freedom to tweak around with the formation a little bit, whether it's that 4-4-2 that you're talking about where Messi plays that false 9 or whether it's a genuine 4-3-3. I think there's more maneuverability here and doesn't get discounted by the fact that we're bringing in Baltasar Rodriguez back. I think I don't want to say you're reading too much into this because every time I say that, you always are correct. Let me give you credit there. So I don't want to say you're reading too much into it, but I do want to push back and offer a different perspective here. I don't think Baltasar coming back necessitates that we play that 4-4-2 with Suarez and Messi up top. Although I do think it's concerning for the midfield. Sorry.
I don't think it necessitates it. I think that along with everything else they're doing kind of points me in that direction. Like that's just a part of it. And I think if you go to a 4-4-2, then you do have all these problems. Okay, let me ask you an overlying question that we haven't really talked about, and it's been hanging over everyone's head. I am concerned about Suarez because I don't think he's a role player, period. I don't think he's good coming off the bench. I don't think he's good coming in cold. I think he's a volume shooter type of player where he kind of needs to be playing all the time or he's going to be bad whenever he does play. And I get a lot of you would be fine watching him sit on the bench for 90% of the season. I just don't think that is what is going to end up happening, which means I do think he's going to end up starting large stretches of the season until the summer, really, I think. And so does that mean they won't take him out of a second game of a week if it's in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and they feel it's a must win? Like I think they can and will. Like I think in the most important games you might see he could come out. But I think for like the vast stretch of just normal MLS games, he's going to be in the starting lineup because they don't want him to get cold. They don't want to bring him off the bench for 20 minutes because it's not a role he's good in. And so if you're back to having to fit him in the starting 11, which I'm not saying I would do, but I think they're going to, here we are again, man.
Sorry, I'm laughing because some of the comments in the chat. I love how you always come across as the advocate for Suarez, even though that's not what you're saying at all. So I just want to clarify. You're not saying that Suarez should start. Correct. What you're saying, that's what the team is going to do. And I agree with you. They would not have signed him if they wanted him to be like a bench player who's going to come off. If that's what they're thinking that he would want to do, they've messed with the wrong horse. Because he may say, "Oh, I'm ready to be a role player. I might be able to do a bench role." He's not good with that. He is not good with that. He will not be good at that role, and he will demand minutes to be effective.
That's not even a personality thing. Like I don't think the player profile doesn't work that way either.
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you for clarifying that because I wouldn't have re-signed him, honestly.
Yeah, I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot if they re-signed him, when they re-signed him, because you basically tie one hand behind the back when you talk about how you want this team to play. So it's going to be super interesting, because if this is the direction that they're going with, where he plays most of the MLS games, but in the big games he comes off, I don't know if that's lucrative or conducive to this team performing on all gears, because how do you play for a majority of the season with that one striker up front? And then in the big games, you expect the team to play a completely different style. So
Well,
that was a bad signing for me,
can
man.
I
It was
can
a
I
bad signing for me.
can I give you a scenario that could make this all be okay?
Sure.
In the CONCACAF Champions Cup midweek games, they do what they did in the playoffs, where Suarez does not start. Messi is the false nine. You get a lot of guys athletic around him. And then in the weekend MLS games, you do have Suarez start. You play a more conservative style, and you ride that out for the first 3 months through the CONCACAF Champions Cup run. Then the World Cup hits. You go sign like a real number 9 DP, and you tell Suarez, we talked about this when you signed you. Your role was in the first half of the season. We were going to get you for continuity while we were chasing this one goal. But now we're going to get a real striker. We're going to get a guy who's going to be better than you. And you are going to be a bench piece. And if you want to retire, we understand. If you want to stay and get 10% of the minutes, we understand. But his role is to be the MLS starting striker for the first half of the season, not in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And then in the midway point of the season, they go sign his replacement, and he becomes that 10% of minutes type of player. Would you be okay with that?
I think that needs to be the plan, because, okay, you're bringing back Suarez. I have a feeling that eventually, Inter Miami is going to end up playing that style that they played in the playoffs, because that's what works. That's effective. And they will have the players to be able to execute that style as well. Whether you want to call it a 4-4-2, whether you want to call it a 4-3-3, Inter Miami will eventually reach a point where Mascherano realizes the best way to get results is through that. I hope they've understood what Suarez's role is going to be. They've defined that before they have signed him. If they have signed him with the intention that, he's still able to contribute to this team, let's bring him back. If they haven't decided or had that conversation with Suarez of how he is going to contribute to the team, for me, that's going to be problematic. Something tells me they have not had that conversation with Suarez, and eventually I expect things to fall into place and fall out with Suarez. Fall into place, I mean, we're going to revert to that 4-3-3/4-4-2 where Messi plays the false nine, because that's the reality of this team now.
Can I ask you, just so we're on the same page here, I don't think he can be what Segovia was in the playoffs last year, where he comes on for the last 30 minutes of every game. I don't think that's a good role for him.
Absolutely not.
So I think he has to be your starting striker or not playing, and he becomes Ryan Sailor. Like, are you in agreement that those are the two options? And if you try and force him into playing the last 30 minutes, it's going to be bad.
So here's the thing, right? There's, of course, you alluded to this already. Given how many games we're going to play, it might just be that in one game he's going to be that starting player, and the other game he's going to be on the bench. And if that's the role, that's fine.
But if he's on the bench, it's not to come in the 60th minute to save the game or change the game.
No.
You're not playing unless we're up 3 goals.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is too. And if that's the case, you get one extra forward to start. One of them's going to be Allende. So even if you can manage to create another winger position on the other side, you now have Telasco Segovia, Baltasar Rodriguez, and Matteo Silvetti
vying for one spot.
And I'll be honest, as much as I love Segovia, I will be devastated if Matteo Silvetti is not starting game in and game out. Mm-hmm. And so already I don't see a need for Baltasar. But then if we add him, like, it just becomes more congested. Okay, let's assume I'm wrong and that this doesn't mean we're playing a 4-4-2. We're going back to our dream 4-3-3 scenario, which is what I would prefer.
Let's go.
Are we good in the midfield now if we add Baltasar?
I wouldn't start him, but I'd be happy with him being a bench piece. Absolutely.
Because I will be honest, I was not impressed, and I've seen a lot of people say things in the chat
Yeah.
about Baltasar Rodriguez that I do not agree with. But I also think his best position is not where we were playing him last year. Like I think if you put him as more of a 10 in a three-man midfield or as a left winger, like I do think he could be better, and maybe we will see that this year. And so if you tell me our midfield trio, we're gonna have a midfield trio every game, and we have 6 guys that we like for that in Rodrigo de Paul, David Ajala, Yannick Bright, Telasco Segovia, Baltasar Rodriguez, and David Ruiz, I'm good with that.
Can I offer my idea on this?
I would love to hear your idea, man. That's what this is all about.
I think Baltasar Rodriguez and Silvetti compete for that left wing spot if we're playing a 4-3-3, and then the remainder, the names that you mentioned, be your midfield options. I don't know if I would play Baltasar Rodriguez in that middle consistently at all, actually.
I agree with that. It's at least consistently. I think your starters are Segovia,
Rodrigo de Paul, Ajala.
Ajala, and Yannick Bright. Like those 4 in your 3 midfield spots. And then if your left winger is Baltasar / Silvetti,
Exactly.
I feel good about that. But then how do you make the other side work?
So here's the thing. Well, Allende on that side, right? But
or Messi, if Suarez has
or
to
Messi. Yeah, but I doubt Messi is going to play on that right wing. I think that 4-3-3 only works because we don't have an overlapping. Oh, well, I'm not sure how Facundo Mura would fit into this. Ian Frey can sort of play that role, yeah. But we haven't seen much of that under
Chelo we saw when he was playing.
We haven't seen much of that overlapping fullback under Javi Marciano as such. So I'm not sure. But we also
haven't played a 4-4-2, and we haven't played a 4-3-3.
But for me, I think the most exciting thing about this midfield was having most exciting thing about no longer having Sergio Busquets on this team, which is wild because it's not exciting at all, was playing Segovia, Rodrigo de Paul, Yannick Bright together. And now you add Ajala in that equation. That's a bomb midfield. That midfield might just be the best midfield in the league, which is saying I would say any combination of that would be the best midfield in the league.
And the right combination of that is the best defensive unit, period, in the league.
Yeah.
When you think of the reinforcements we've brought in defensively and a goalkeeper, you're talking about an incredibly defensively balanced, really good defensive team.
That team could evolve into they could do everything. They could play against any team. They could beat any team on their day. That would be a well-oiled machine like the Columbus of 2023 or Cincinnati. Like, it wouldn't be the ifs and whens and buts. It would be, this is what this team does every single day, every single week. So I think that should be the direction that this team is going in. That 4-3-3 with the middle three of Rodrigo de Paul, Segovia / Bright, Ajala / Bright. And I think you're set for all competitions there. They can play in any and every competition. And yes, you may have a dip in form from time to time. Then you can fit in Baltasar Rodriguez in the middle if you want to. You can play Ayala a little bit more if Bright is suffering in form, or vice versa. If Segovia is not doing particularly well, you can add in, again, Baltasar Rodriguez. So there's so many combinations you can bring in now. I think you need the 3-man midfield for the number of players that you brought into that position. And then you solve the problem of the left wing as well, because you now have Matteo Silvetti and Baltasar Rodriguez who are competing for that spot, who are 2 very bright, promising prospects. Well, Silvetti is a prospect for sure. Baltasar still has room to improve, can, I think, show more than what he showed last season. And you can have Silvetti play 60 minutes, bring in Baltasar in the 60th minute, or vice versa, or just use them in more effective ways. And you could potentially even use Baltasar as a backup to Tadeo Allende on the right if you want to rest Allende a little bit. So
or move Silvetti
for me, and if you don't want to play, if you want to play Suarez, you just rest both of them. So there's just so much that we can actually do with that 4-3-3, and I absolutely love how much fluidity and maneuverability that has. And honestly, we don't even need another signing after that in the front positions if you're playing that 4-3-3. But the question is Javi Marciano going to play that 4-3-3? So That's the most exciting part of the preseason for me. What's the formation we're going to come out with? And honestly, it all hinges on A, the formation, and B, what Suarez's role is going to be. Because those two questions could actually define how Inter Miami sets up this season.
I'm with you, man. I want to see it. I just, they are running it back, I think, with the way they're with the players they're signing. They're trying to run it back, it seems to me. And they didn't go to a 4-3-3 at any point last year.
I don't think they're going to run it back. I have a feeling they won't run it back. So
you just want that to be the case.
I want that to be the case.
I do
I
too.
am manifesting it. I want it to be a 4-3-3. I want Javier Marciano to have evolved as a coach and not revert to his pragmatism. The team was absolutely unleashed in those 4 games, and I want to see what that looks like over the course of the season. We may actually concede 5 goals every single game, but we're probably going to end up scoring 10. And that's what I'm here for. I think this team is ready for an exciting attack. And Suarez is the key that's going to hold us back. He's going to lock that in a cupboard and never let that out. So I hope that's not the case. And I hope they've thought this through. For me, the most, rational, maybe not, but the way this would make sense would be that they told Suarez, okay, you're going to come back. You're going to play a rotational role in the MLS. You're going to be our starting striker, but we can't guarantee that in the major games, such as the CONCACAF Champions Cup. We're going to run it until the summer when we're going to get in a DP striker and we're going to work from there. That, for me, is the conversation they should have had with Suarez when they brought him in. If that's not the case, then it's going to be a lot of...
That's the scenario I talked about 10 minutes ago. Like, if that's the strategy, I think you can live with that.
Make it work.
Like,
I do want to caveat something. I think this team will be phenomenal regardless. Even if Suarez does play, he may not play that well, but we have so much talent, we're still going to be able to beat a lot of the teams. I'm not talking about the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I think in the long run, this team, even if we play a 4-4-2, is going to be successful. The only issue is we on the podcast are going to get on and be like, why is this player not playing more? Why is this player not playing in this position when he should be starting? So those are the conversations that I'm not looking forward to if we do revert to our type that we had under Javier Marciano during the regular season last year. That's about it. That's all I've got.
I don't disagree with you. I think the club is going to view it a little bit differently. And that's what I want to do.
And that's fine. You can't always get what you want as fans. I think it'd be so heartening if we have Segovia start games and if we see the midfield 3 that we want to see. But if it doesn't happen, then I think that's more of a personal grievance as fans that we have more than it's going to hurt the team. Maybe it might hurt the team as well. But for now, what I think is it's probably going to be a personal grievance of one player being sacrificed at the expense of another.
Okay, I want to talk about something else that's along these lines. And I wanted to make sure we talked about the roster construction first. Inter Miami looks set to go with a 4 U22 2DP setup, at least until the summer, and they will get the extra allocation money for it. And I don't think there's a player that they want to fill that third DP spot with that's going to be available until the summer. And right now they have 4 U22 DPs. Now, we have talked about Toto Aviles not being a part of this roster. I think he will be ready for a new challenge. He's gotten to play with Messi. He's gotten to win trophies. He won the Leagues Cup. He was starter for the Leagues Cup, starter for the Supporter Shield, is going to get an MLS Cup ring, even though he didn't start in that game. He's been around Messi for 2.5 years. I think he's gotten all the novel aspects of being at Inter Miami. And then if he's not going to play and develop for his career, I think he'll be ready to move on. So from his perspective, I think it makes sense. And from Inter Miami's perspective, you clear the U22 spot and you are going to move a center back who might be agitating for more minutes off and give him an opportunity to go get more minutes somewhere else. So I think it makes sense from both spots. That will free up a U22 spot, which it feels like they're about to fill with Baltasar Rodriguez. My question that I have is actually, what if it's not Baltasar that they're filling that spot with? I'm sorry. What if it's not the Toto Avila spot that they're filling it with? It's the Talasco Segovia spot that they're filling it with. Because I'm very nervous is the wrong word. I think we're we're going to lose Telasco Segovia. And I think that's the other shoe to drop in this whole conversation. And I love Telasco Segovia as a player. I really do. I think he's one of the most talented in Inter Miami. But if I'm him, I watched what happened last season with Baltasar Rodriguez, who was not better than him. And clearly Javier Mascherano thinks he is. I don't think so, and I don't think Telasco Segovia thinks so. And he didn't complain at all because they were trying to win an MLS Cup, but I don't think he's going to be okay with being a guy that was at the Club World Cup playing against Porto and balling out and scoring goals and having everyone say he's worth $20 million to going into a season as a backup if he feels like he has options potentially in the Premier League. We've heard Fulham's interested, potentially in Spain. Real Betis is interested. So I think actually maybe the reason they're going back in for Baltasar when 3 weeks ago maybe it looked like they weren't is because they think they're about to sell Telasco Segovia.
On the Toto Aviles point first, I think it makes sense for all parties. If Aviles stays for another year on this roster, I think it's going to be detrimental for his growth. It's going to be detrimental for his career because he's not getting anything out of Inter Miami anymore. It's now, I think, marginal returns for him. So he should be the player that Inter Miami looks to move on. I won't be surprised if that move comes through as well. And I agree with you. If Inter Miami signs Baltasar Rodriguez, I think it's at the expense of Segovia because it wouldn't make sense to keep Segovia on. Segovia does not deserve to be on the bench. He is uber talented. He can be the marquee man for any other MLS team, and he can actually move to Europe at any point right now. He's, I think, ready. If not now, then maybe in the summer, he's definitely going to be ready to move on. So now it's the matter of whether you want to keep Segovia here and allow him to bring in more suitors like you did with Diego Gomez, or you move in on because you think now's the right time to cash him and Javier Mascherano thinks Baltasar's a better fit to this team. I think if we bring in Baltasar, Segovia's probably gone.
I think that's where my brain is going with this, and that's the other shoe to drop. Now, I think there was something about Ian Frey and Real Salt Lake. I saw that, like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Yannick Bright, I don't think is going anywhere. Noah Allen, I don't think is going anywhere, at least not this window.
I hope not.
I would be shocked if any of those guys left. Segovia is the one that I think might be on his way out. And listen, if they're bringing in Baltasar and then by consequence...
Another U22.
No. By consequence, Telasco wants to leave. I hate that.
Yeah.
If they know Telasco is about to leave and they're bringing in Baltasar as his sort of replacement, I can understand. I like that. I can be on board with. But I don't think they can fit on the same roster because if it's 4-4-2, now you're talking about not just Segovia versus Baltasar, but it's Segovia, Baltasar, and Silvetti all battling for one spot. And then if you go into the midfield, like I still think that's where Baltasar fits. Maybe makes the most sense because I still think he will be behind Silvetti, Allende, Suarez, and Messi in the pecking order up top. And so then you're talking about him being sort of like your most attacking central midfielder. And then he's still competing with Segovia and then RDP and Ajal and Yannick Bright. So I think if you're bringing in Baltasar, who creates a sort of depth issue or like how do you manage this issue, it makes sense that you're moving someone on. And I don't love the trade because I think Segovia is a more talented player. But if this is Segovia getting his big opportunity, like I'm not going to fight him on. Like I'm happy for him.
My naive brain says this is Segovia getting his opportunity and he wants to move to the next step. And that's why they're like, okay, let's bring in a known devil in Baltasar Rodriguez. I also think they're going to move on to Toto Aviles and then bring in another U22. I genuinely think that might be a possibility.
No, I do too. I just think they're separate conversations.
Yeah.
And I think they wanted this kid from Bolivia who, man, I want him so bad. I don't think it's going to happen. But
I want to stay positive and I want to be in delusion. So here's what I'm going to say. Telasco Segovia, after his performances for Inter Miami, has earned the move abroad. There's 2 suitors calling in on him and he wants to move. And because of that, Inter Miami very reluctantly is saying, okay, we're going to sanction your move and we're going to try and bring back Baltasar Rodriguez, who Javier Mascherano knows well. So that's the plan. And if that's the case, I'm okay with it. I hope Segovia has a great future. I'm going to continue to follow him. Whether it's at Inter Miami or whether it's somewhere else, we'll see.
By the way, I think I do hope, just for Segovia's sake, I think he would be an excellent fit in La Liga, and I am a little unsure how he would do in the Premier League just because of his physical profile.
Physicality.
So I do hope he goes.
He also plays for Venezuela, so
I do hope he goes to Real Betis or in Spain, because I think he could be really, really good there. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is Javier Mascherano. Because last year, during the playoffs, in the last 6 weeks of the season, they played one game a week, and we had basically the same 11. I think with the exception of the goalkeeper, we knew exactly who the 11 was for the last 8 to 10 weeks of the season. And I think there's a lot of guys that maybe weren't thrilled with their playing time or their role, but we're not going to say or speak up or demand anything because the team was trying to win an MLS Cup. And that's the right thing to do, and I applaud them for it. I don't know if that's going to fly this year. And then I look back when we had 2 games a week, and I didn't think Javier Mascherano did a particularly good job of rotating. I didn't think he did a particularly good job of getting everyone involved on a regular basis. I think there's a lot of guys that would have long periods of time where they felt like they weren't getting the minutes they deserved. And so if we're playing the optimistic game, where we're keeping all these players, and as we talked about, they could keep all of these players. They have a lot of defensive players that need minutes. They're going to have a lot of forward players that need, at least one extra, potentially 2 extra forward players that are going to need minutes, and at least 1 or 2 extra midfielders that are going to need minutes. I've seen a lot of people be much more positive on Javier Mascherano over the last couple months because they won the MLS Cup, and that's totally deserved, and I get it. That is one concern I still have, where they're building a deep roster with really talented players across the board, and then you're getting some issues where you're going to have to manage minutes and rotations, and I don't think we saw Mascherano do a particularly good job of that last year. Are you concerned about it, or are you feeling better about it?
I'm actually, okay, I want to take it phase by phase in our formation. Goalkeeper, not that concerned. I think Rocco's probably going to get less time this time around than he did last year, which is saying something because we didn't expect him. It doesn't matter that much. I think the back line is in a very solid state. If you get rid of Aviles and then maybe Lujan, I think we have plenty of backup. Everyone's going to get minutes.
But do you feel good about that?
I feel fine about the back line.
At present, you have Maxi Falcone and Mikael as your 2 starters, I think.
Yeah.
And Noah Allen has to get minutes.
He will.
Gave him a new contract.
I think he will.
You trust Mascherano to do that?
I'm not saying he's going to get all the minutes at centre back. I think he's going to get enough minutes between left back and centre back to be comfortable in not making a fuss about.
And what if they sign Tristan Blackman or another centre back, and now you have Maxi Falcone also not getting minutes on a regular basis?
I think there's plenty of games,
all 4 of those.
I do think Javier Mascherano, for whatever his faults may have been, last season moved around his back line quite a bit. Maybe not his front line, maybe not the goal scorers, but the back line got minutes. Lujan got minutes. Whether that was because he was still figuring out who his top 2 centre backs was, but I do think you need at least 4 centre backs top quality. Because
there weren't 4 centre backs that got minutes last year. Falcone, Noah Allen, and Gonzalo Lujan got minutes. Toto Avios did not get the minutes he wanted, and neither did David Martinez. And they wanted to go sign another center back, and they didn't end up being able to.
See, now this is what I don't like. I thought we were being optimistic.
No, I guess it's more of a like.
I think it'll be fine. I think there's a lot of games for these players. Yeah, but I do think there's a lot of games for these players to get enough minutes. Yeah, I'm happy with the back line because I think there's some trouble brewing up in the midfield. So I don't want to spend too much time thinking about the back line.
Well, you got the midfield too, right?
That's all up to the formation that we play and what Suarez's role on this team is going to be. If it's a 4-3-3, I think we're in a very good state because you can give Baltazar and Silvetti time up top. You can move around with Segovia, Yannick Bright, Ayala, and then have Rodrigo de Paul as your linchpin, and there's going to be plenty of minutes for everyone. There's also, I think, a conversation to be had about Tadeo Allende and who his backup's going to be. So I think across the front line and in the middle, if you play a 4-3-3, there's plenty of maneuverability. If you play a 4-4-2, then I'll be a little bit concerned about certain players. And I think Segovia is probably going to be gone if the 4-4-2 is the plan for next year.
Okay, you're being Mr. Optimist. Is there any chance Silvetti's not a locked-in starter for this team?
Oh, no. He has to start. He has to start.
So that's really the one thing I'm really worried about.
He has to start.
Is there anything? I mean, they don't need a backup striker.
No.
Suarez plus Messi being a false nine plus Allende in emergency situations, I think is sufficient.
I think if they sign Baltazar Rodriguez, they don't need one.
At winger, they'll have Baltasar, Silvetti, Allende, potentially Messi if they play a 4-3-3. I don't think there's any kids coming through that are going to be there, so I don't know.
I would actually get a winger for Allende, maybe. He's going to play so many games, right?
I would love
a
to
right
use the
winger.
last U22 spot on a winger.
Yeah.
And that would be the spot that they would open up with Toto Aviles moving on.
Mm-hmm.
That would be
I
what
agree.
I'd love to do. But I also think it matters which player because, I have my heart set on, this kid from Bolivia. So if it's not him, I'll be disappointed. And we'll just leave it at that. Do you want to talk about bingo or do you want to save that for the next episode?
No, let's talk about bingo. We can't push it back because something very interesting and unique has happened. And Scotty has hit bingo. Well done.
Boom. Right across that middle line, sign a new starting center back, sign Sergio Reguilon, sign Facundo Mura, re-sign Luis Suarez, sign an Argentine player. Bada boom, bada bang. Scotty's on the board with a bingo. There's just one simple problem.
The
Saur's
champion
also on the board with
comes
a bingo.
swinging.
Right up and down the middle, sign a new U22, which would be David Ayala, sign a new goalkeeper, Dane St. Clair, sign Facundo Mura, sign Sergio Reguilon, sign the starting center back, which is Miguel Saur, on the same day that I got bingo by signing a new Argentine in David Ayala. You get bingo for signing a new U22 in David Ayala. Same exact player gives us both bingo. So that, I think, means we have to fight to see who gets to win. Are we going to live stream our fight? And how are you feeling?
Sure. If I ask you to run a marathon beforehand, and then you're only allowed to wrestle while I'm only allowed to kick and punch, I think we'll be fine. There's a better way in which we can actually sort this out, which doesn't involve any of us getting a concussion or two or breaking a few bones. That is rock, paper, scissors live on the first game of the season, or we just continue to play and see who gets the next line, and whoever gets the next line wins. There's a few ways in which we can figure this out.
I will just tell you, I got buying out Ascustari and selling Toto Aviles on that downward angle. I'm feeling pretty good about getting another bingo here.
Yeah,
we will continue to monitor it over the course of the off season. But that's the bingo update. Both of us sort of hit it when David Ayala got picked up by Miami. Any final thoughts? I mean, I was, I think, more thinking through some of the difficulties that you're presenting with this current build. But I do think, like you said earlier, I'm very optimistic about what this team will be overall. I think they're going to be very talented. I'm not pessimistic on the team. I just want to make sure I'm pointing out things that are concerning to me because I don't want to hold it in, and I don't think that's a good way to live. I love the fact that they have so much cohesion and chemistry with the roster that they're putting together right now. They have a lot of guys that were here last year. They're not going out and signing a bunch of new players and trying to make it all work within 3 weeks to make this CONCACAF Champions Cup run. I love the fact they're being very aggressive towards the CONCACAF Champions Cup and making that, like, clearly they are building this team to make that run. I love what they're doing defensively. I love the ambition. I just totally nitpicky on everything. So I want to be clear. I get that.
No, I think it's important to frame this conversation, and you've, I think, said it the correct way. Sometimes the way our conversations on this podcast work, we analyze things so much. We try to look at it from both sides. Often at times we try to critique our own ideas and thoughts, and that can come across as being pessimistic and being negative and being down and out on the team itself. I think this conversation is important to be had because there's genuinely a question about how Inter Miami is going to play next season. And there can be concerns, there can be question marks, there can be difficulties about how you're going to fit so many different challenges and so many different talented people on this roster. And we obviously have our biases. We want certain players to play. We want to see this team perform in a certain way. But I think those are all added conversations to the general point that Inter Miami is killing it in the offseason. We're doing really well. And I think one point that's not been discussed enough is what you just said. The chemistry that we're bringing back is probably going to help us in the long run and is underrated. Short run as well. Yeah, with the CONCACAF Champions Cup, because LA Galaxy got a tank of a season immediately after winning the MLS Cup. And Inter Miami is doing a really good job of bringing a good mix of players that they've lost and players who played really well. And I think we're in a very good space overall, but there's still questions / concerns / just general talking points about how this is going to shape up. One thing I will say, the best thing to happen last season was that we had one playing style, which wasn't necessarily great to look at, but didn't affect our season negatively in the long run. We were able to win a cup because we discovered another way to play with this team. This season, we already have that as a backup. We know what this team would look like if they play in that playoff run the way they did. So I don't think we're going to have to wait for 6-7 months to see this team explode. If Javier Mascherano's plan A doesn't work, which I think is going to be the 4-4-2, which you think is going to be the 4-4-2, he may actually be quicker to revert to the 4-4-2 false 9 hybrid that he had, which for me is promising.
Yeah, no, I do kind of agree with you. You know, I've laid out this whole case for them, I think, starting in a 4-4-2 and Suarez being the guy, but I also don't think they're locked into that. Like I think
no, I don't think so. Yeah.
So even if that is what it looks like on January 24th when they have their first preseason game, or on February 25th or whatever the first game of the regular season is, I don't think we're going to be stuck with it for the whole season like we were this year, or at least I hope not. Because like you, I think you can really make this 4-3-3 look really fun and exciting. And I hope we keep Segovia. I hope we keep all these players. I think you can move Aviles, Lujan, and Oscar Ustari off the roster and have the room you need to do anything. It's the other issues that kind of climb up with that. But if you play
this
a 4-3-3,
team is that close to being ready.
What do you want to see? What do you want to see? What else do you want to see?
I think I want to see Blackman come in for sure, or a defender of his ilk.
Another center back.
Yeah, another center back. I would love to see a winger along with a central midfielder. So I think I moved away from my striker to actually having a winger who can play across the front line, left wing, right wing. And then if we're signing Baltazar, that's fine for me. But I think a central midfielder, a hybrid winger, and then a center back.
I also want to just say last thing on the Baltazar thing. I want him to play higher up the pitch if he's going to play, because I think he's way worse back playing in that defensive left midfield role. Like I don't think that's a good fit for him. So even all these times I've sort of not been impressed with him, he's been playing in a position I don't think fits for him, and I want to be fair to him. You throw him up as a true left winger or as a true number 10, I think we might see a much more like impressive player.
Yeah,
and so. That's why I'm afraid about this 4-4-2, because, again, you're not even getting the best out of him. So I hope it's a 4-3-3. We'll find out hopefully soon in the next couple weeks. Saur, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, great conversation. On to the next one. Let's see what more comes our way with the off season, because I'm pretty sure there's a few curveballs that Inter Miami is going to throw our way.
They're going to start training in like 3 days.
Yep.
2 days. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. As always, we'll be back sometime soon. And until then, I hope you guys have a lovely night, and we'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.